The world is not a very equitable place. There are a lot of inequities in the world. It's hard for us here in North America to imagine how, or to think, even have a mental concept of how most of the people in the world live. That's why I think it's good for people who were born in North America to get outside of North America for a significant period of time in their life, just to build friendships with people in other parts of the world and to understand how most of the people in the world live. You know, there are huge differences just in access to education, to employment, even food. And for those of us here in North America, where we tend to have freezers, we have food that we don't even know we have. I remember one time talking to a man who had a company that sold appliances, and he was saying it's always interesting to deliver a new freezer because when people get a new freezer and they empty out their old one, they find food in the bottom that's been there for years. They didn't even know they had it anymore. And really, that is abnormal in the world. And most people in the world just don't have that excess supply of food that we tend to have here in North America. That was illustrated to me when we lived in Haiti, and there they have a rainy season and a dry season, and people plant their gardens. And at that time, a lot of people lived there were people who lived out of what they grew in their gardens. And so at the dry season, then they, of course, things stopped growing because there was no rain from November until maybe in early March. So for November, December, January, February, things really dried up and people would eat food out of their gardens. Well, in the late winter of 1990, it was getting toward the end of dry season and people were running out of food and people didn't have very much food. And one Sunday, we were at church on a Sunday morning, and at the end of the morning service, Pastor Paul got up to close the service and he said, um, I know that a lot of you didn't have anything to eat before you came to church this morning. And I know that you don't have anything to eat when you go home from church. So we're going to have an evening service. We have our normal evening service. But if you want to stay here and sing from now until the evening service, we're going to have an afternoon service where we just sing throughout the afternoon. Because when you sing, you don't think about being hungry. And I just thought about how in North America we go home from church and we feast on meat and mashed potatoes or whatever we have for Sunday dinner, but it's a big meal. And here were some of God's children who were going to sing Sunday afternoon so they wouldn't think about being hungry. And I just think that God, as a Heavenly Father, wants His children to share with each other just like we would expect our children to share what they have. And I just had to ask myself that Sunday, what does God think when He looks down on the world and He sees some of His children feasting and other of His children singing so they won't think about being hungry? The world is not an equitable place. We can't change the world. We can't change the world system as individuals, but we can do something to take from the abundance we have and give it to those who do not have.